Name of Europa League. Oh, sorry, not
The
even Europa
name of
League.
beating
Conference League.
Dynamo Zagreb. I'm sorry, not all of us have that in us. It's
Uh,
actually quite a tough ask, you know. I,
hey,
I wouldn't expect it of most clubs. So you know
hey,
what? You're in the
hey,
majority, Matt.
what Champions League game did you win this morning?
Oh, did you win a Champions League game this morning?
Did you?
I mean, did you?
What Champions League game did you play this morning?
Oh, we're gonna win our game tomorrow. But did you
Oh,
win? I'm sorry.
in
Have
the
you won a
in
Champions
the
League game yet? I don't think
in
you
the
know what that
Europa
feels like.
in the Europa Conference League.
It's okay,
How many
Matt.
champions
Join the
have you
rest
won?
of us. Join the
How
rest of
many
us in not
Champions Leagues
knowing
have you
what it
won?
means to win a
Sorry.
Champions League game. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Secure the Bay podcast. Long awaited, long anticipated. Thank you for joining us wherever you're listening in on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts.
List them off, boy. Keep listing them. We're on it. We're on all these social media platforms, all these listening platforms.
So, Matt, why don't you tell the people about what's taken us so long? Why have we come back to the podcast?
Yeah. Look, we've had a small break off. That small break being because Jackson and I have had some busy times at uni and work at the moment. So we're just juggling our time management between work, uni, and making the podcast. But hopefully we're back now to put out some steady content for what we hope you guys enjoy listening to. So if you do enjoy listening to it, please show us some love. Please like, subscribe, comment, whatever you want to do. Share it off to everyone. Share it off to people. But yeah, let's try and get some appreciation on this podcast. And what we're going to be talking about today is basically the new transfers this season. We did a couple videos already about transfers, but we're going to basically talk into this video about how the transfers. Also going to talk about what we believe some of the managers and managerial positions are going to be like, considering there've been some replacements of managers. So I think it's game week 4 now. It's hard to tell because rest in peace, Queen Elizabeth. She passed away last week or earlier this week. So we've had a postponement of last week's games or last weekend's game week. So it's sort of like game week 3.5 to 4, something around there. So we'll just see what happens with these games this week as well, because I know there's still some more postponements as there's some scarcity and security in the UK.
But assuming that, some games will be postponed this weekend coming potentially due to lack of police. But for the meantime, we can assume that other games will start, and from this point on, there will be no postponements other than a few London games this weekend. So with that in mind, in the season beginning anew, we thought it was a good time to actually start to look at how good have some of these new transfers performed. Most have had about 5 to 6 game appearances, and it's about time we got into them, Matt. So, we want to. Where would you like to start, Matt? What team would you like to start with?
Where we are. Let's start with West Ham, Jackson.
You want to start with?
Let's start with West Ham. Okay.
I've got a lot to say on this. I've been so upset, so angry.
Do you want to introduce the player, Jackson, please?
I'd like to introduce a man named Lucas Paqueta, one of our most expensive transfers ever, if not our single most expensive transfer ever. Now, I didn't think we were going to get him. He really wasn't on the cards, but I'm really glad we did. We've been lacking creativity the first few games. It's really been trouble. And that's not to say a lot of money's been put into the club. We've spent third or second most in Europe on transfers this transfer summer. And although you wouldn't be able to tell the results, we've lost quite a few games. While I did watch our maiden win against Aston Villa, I was not impressed with the other games. We didn't start most of our new signings. We've been bringing them off the bench. Moyes has wanted to sort of bring him in gradually. And the same applies for Lucas Paqueta. So he's only actually played a couple games because he was a late signing. But I like to think his stats are already suggesting that he's going to be a source of creativity for us in the middle of the park and sort of advancing towards the final third. I will say, though, that he's got more clearances than I thought he should have. I'm worried that a player like that, who's so creatively going forward, I'm worried if he keeps getting forced to come back and help defend too much. I do want him to be focused on creatively breaking down the lines up front. I mean, Matt, this isn't even a big deal for you. I mean, 60, 50 million, it's like nothing to you guys.
It's chump change for us. What are you
Chump
talking
change.
about? I mean, you do look at those 9 clearances, as you mentioned, and you see that is a fair bit of clearances, but you also see, those 6 recoveries as well, the 2 interceptions. So he is trying when balls get passed to the defensive line, he is trying to work and track back and try and get those recoveries and
Yeah.
trying to help the team out as much as he can.
Yeah.
But I will say, didn't really help you guys out in that London derby, was it?
Yeah. But,
I can't remember how long ago. What happened there?
not
Sorry,
all of us can,
Chelsea,
pay off
Chelsea
the
got the
ref.
one.
It's really not
Oh,
on the.
please.
But don't worry, I'm quite happy now because Dynamo Zagreb, there were no corrupt refs in that game, so Chelsea's luck ran out in that one, so it was
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. Talk to me when you win the Champions League game, Jackson.
Talk to me when you win a Champions League game this season,
Yeah,
Matt. I just don't want to
mate.
hear it.
We've won 2 Champions League trophies already. Mate, how many times have you been in the Champions League? Anyway,
No.
let's
We've won a
move.
World Cup. We've won a World Cup. When did
Oh,
Chelsea do that?
Bobby Moore, the goal scorers and that. England,
Well, Matt. Yeah.
West Ham won England the World Cup, mate.
All
Yeah,
I'm hearing is sadness and tears. So,
yeah.
come back to me when you beat Dynamo Zagreb, bruh. With that said, I mean, I feel like generally for West Ham, though, I think I'll wrap up the West Ham and say this. We've got some brilliant new signings. I'm very optimistic about them, but we probably won't be able to judge them properly for a month. Many of them are being brought in slowly, which is, I think it's the exception of the teams we're going to look at with maybe alongside Tottenham. Most other teams, we already have enough data to look at those new signings. And I think with that, we can move to Chelsea, where signings have been brought in very, very quickly. We already see that there's all those players have had a lot of games. So, Matt, which one would you like to start off with?
Okay, so Chelsea's had a few signings this season, as Jackson previously mentioned. But let's start off with a defensive rock at centre back who probably picks up one too many cards for his 5 appearances, and that's Koulibaly. Let's start off with him. He's, like I said, had 5 appearances. Very good duels, winning duels. He's had 28 wins to 17 losses, and his aerial battles, he's really good in the air, 13-6. He also scored I believe it was his first game that he played for us, an amazing strike off a corner. No one was marking him. Bang, hits it, top corner. Koulibaly. The only problem with him at the moment is he is foul prone. I have witnessed, and I think everyone has seen that as well. Judging by his previous games, you can see he's picked up a few yellow cards. He's had a red card here and there, so he's a bit foul prone, and I think that's something that's going to come back to hurt Chelsea, considering we have him and we have Wesley Fofana in our back line, and we have Thiago Silva. So, Thiago Silva he's a great defender. He is getting old though, so I don't know how much he can keep up with the speed of the Premier League, but he's holding his own for his age. But yeah, Koulibaly really needs to cut out that foul trouble.
Well, I mean, when you think about it, Koulibaly he's the absolute needed starter for Chelsea. Like,
he is.
Because of their issues at the back with not having enough people before Fofana came in. Like, he has to start every game for that back line to be solid. But even his partners, like as you said, I mean, Koulibaly's very similar in physique to Rudiger.
That's what I was about to say. He's basically he's this year's equivalent of Rudiger.
Yeah,
we needed to find someone who was like Rudiger to cement our back line.
But whether that works under Graham Potter is another thing, because Rudiger worked well under Tuchel. But we'll see whether a similar player works so well under Graham Potter. I mean, I know the situation's a bit confusing at Chelsea now because Fofana was a Tuchel signing as well. So, like, how Tuchel will organise that back line, we don't know. But what I feel is certain that he will have to play Koulibaly. Koulibaly will be the centre of his line because he's got no other option.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, you look at some of the other centre backs we have, and Koulibaly is probably one of the strongest centre backs to put in the middle of that back three that we play. Because like just listen off, like I said, Thiago Silva, I said Fofana before. We have Azpilicueta, but Azpilicueta is starting to really drive himself out of the club. He really wants to be a Barcelona, so he's not going to really get much game time at that back line position. Malang Sarr's gone out on loan, which we weren't starting him anyway, so there was no point him being there. And Chalabar's still knocking about, but he's on the bench and he's had injuries here and there. So it's really Koulibaly that needs to cement our back line.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think that's about it, right? I mean, but the back line isn't just about your centre backs though.
No,
it's about your fullbacks, isn't
about
it?
our fullbacks as well. And we've made some fullback signings, haven't we? I think we signed Mark Cucurella, who's a former Brighton player, so he's linking up with Graham Potter again. We also, it's not really a signing per se, but we got him back from injury. We've got Ben Chilwell back as well, so that's good. That's going to be a good competition at that left wing back position, Chilwell and Cucurella, to see who gets there. I mean, we've seen Cucurella a bit this year so far. He's had 6 appearances for Chelsea. Decent stats, not the best stats. And we've also seen Chilwell come off the bench a fair few times as Cucurella's been favoured to start. And Chilwell's come on and provided us with some crucial moments. A very good goal, I might add. Megan the keeper off a magnificent ball. So yeah, we've had some good signings, but it is going to be a duel between Cucurella and Chilwell.
I don't know. I think Graham Potter will just play Cucurella. That's a player he knows.
He's favourite Cucurella. But judging by some of the stats we're looking at, I mean, the stats that we can see on the screen, the stats that I'm looking at as well, I mean, the duel's the one that lost, 17-21. As a wing back, I know the modern wing backs try to push and try to attack as well as defending, but when you have a sub 50 dual win lose rate as a defender, like you're still primarily a defender as well. That's semi poor. Considering his output as well, like he's only got 2 assists in the 6 games that he's played.
It's been a rough 6 games for Chelsea, though. To be fair, in the league,
it has.
It's what it's supposed to do. I will say though, I also heard he's prone to hair pulling, so it's like you got to watch out for that as well. It's also a weakness as a player.
Don't start me with that, Jackson. That should have been called a foul in the Tottenham game, and you know it.
If you grow out your hair, you have to deal with the consequences of your actions.
Right. Shall we roll Anthony Taylor clips of how many times he's not given Chelsea calls? Yeah. Shall we roll the clip, because there's a fair few of them.
I think that was unlucky for him, but like. You mentioned the defensive, and at the end of the day, Cucurella's decent defense, but he's an attacking fullback.
That's it.
Whereas Chilwell, I think, is more balanced, and Reece James is more balanced. Cucurella is very attacking, but it's good that they're different. I don't think you need Cucurella to be better than Chilwell. I don't think that he necessarily is, but they're different. They provide different options.
It's a good dynamic in that position to have.
Yeah.
I will say, nice little cheeky shout out, Reece James, hot take, best right back or right wing back in the league, possibly in the world at the moment. Don't think Trent Alexander-Arnold's been performing up to standard this season, but that's just a little addition to this conversation.
Well. I don't know.
Those are some of our Chelsea signings. We have signed a few other players like Aubameyang, but we will get into those possibly a bit later, or possibly into another video. We just got to see how Aubameyang performs, as he's only played 1 game at the moment.
Yeah,
struggling with that facial injury that he has.
Yeah, I saw him wearing the mask in one of the Champions League games. Yeah.
Yep.
But, I mean, quickly, before we move on to Aubameyang, who we'll talk about briefly because he hasn't had a chance in the league to prove himself, and the injury doesn't help. Cucurella, Fofana, Koulibaly. All seem pretty good on the surface. All have been tested. All have experience in the league. Which one would you suggest is probably the one to be the most pessimistic about? Which one could end this season being someone on the outskirts of the team, someone who's been pushed out of the starting lineup?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question, Jackson. I mean, it's definitely not going to be Koulibaly. I can tell you that, because he's going to be that defensive rock in our team. and he does have a fellow countryman in Mendy in goals as well. So I don't think he's going to be really pushed out. Um, Kukurea and Fofana, it's between them two for me. And honestly, I think it might be Kukurea, in my opinion, even though that Graham Potter's there. Fofana, he's still got, I guess, he's a decently young English player. He's still got other English players around there with as well. But Kukurea, as P's starting to get older, he's starting to want to leave. Graham Potter's probably the only really attractive attraction to him there. There's no other really Spanish players there as well. So I reckon Kukurea might fall off a little bit if he's starting to underperform. That could be, he could be the difference between us winning, us getting. But I want to be optimistic and say win the league, but the way that Man City's going at the moment, I wouldn't say so. Getting a top 4.
You said optimistic, not delusional. Come on, mate.
I'm optimistic.
Hold it together. Hold it together.
I'm not delusional,
Yeah,
mate. I'm not delusional.
A little bit, a little bit.
But yeah, I think he might be the key to whether we get a top 4 spot or not.
I would have said Fofana personally, just because of the injury, but I get the Cucurella one. You can see it happening, can't you? And his defensive frailties. But I think Graham Potter, I think the centre backs that Graham Potter has are better than he had at Brighton, so he should be able to organise a defence behind Cucurella to let him go forward. That's the whole point of that 3 at the back, to give the fullbacks that sort of freedom. So, I mean, we'll quickly talk about Aubameyang. We don't have stats for him. He's a very recent addition to the Chelsea team. High hopes. Do you want to give me a guess at how many goals he's going to have in the league by the end of this season, Matt?
Goals in the league by the end of this season?
I wouldn't go too high.
No, I'm going to go like 14.
I would have gone about 10. I just see I don't see any reason, especially since he's a Tuchel signing now under a different manager, and he's had problems. And while he was good at Barcelona, I think his record in the Premier League race recently has been not so great. Like he had incredible seasons with Arsenal initially, but recently, that might have just been an attitude problem at Arsenal, though. So,
I mean, you did see how it ended with Arsenal, where we all know what happened. But yeah, I believe that Aubameyang's going to get double digits in goals. But I capped that at 15. I don't think he's going to get higher than 15.
I think barely double digits.
Yeah, 14 to 12 to 14, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I'm saying about 10. I'm calling it at about 10. I wouldn't go any higher. But
even though Sterling has a head start on him, I reckon Raheem Sterling will have more goals by the end of the season.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, it's hard to see. I mean, with that, we've somehow linked ourselves to a Man City player who's moved to Chelsea. So that works as a good transition to another Man City player who's moved out. Let's talk about Gabriel Jesus, Matt. Pessimistic about Aubameyang, but as it turns out, some teams have managed to get their new striker signings going from day one.
Yeah. Gabby Jesus, I mean, we saw him play at Man City. Chelsea saw a dagger put through our season by Gabby Jesus last year in a 1-0 win for Man City. It was a tap in the 6-yard box. I remember it very vividly. But Gabby Jesus performing at Arsenal so far this season has been exceptionally well. I don't think many people would have thought he would have got off to as good as the start as he did. I mean, you look at these stats that are on the screen at the moment: 6 appearances, 20 shots, 3 goals, 3 assists, 3 chance created. Those are some pretty good stats for a full out striker. I'd say at Arsenal.
Yeah, and you know what? It's rare. I think if you actually looked into it, there are very few strikers who straight off the bat perform for their team. But I think Gabriel Jesus just fits somehow. He just fits Arsenal's system. He was never the main man at Man City. I think he's got a chance here to be the main man at Arsenal, and I think it's working out for him so far. I mean, to be fair, though, that whole team was just in really good form. Like, the goals were just coming in. Until the Manchester United loss, they were really just cruising at the top of the ladder. So, I mean, we'll see whether he can keep it up. But he's actually not the only Man City player at Arsenal, is he, though, Matt?
No, Zinchenko as well. Right, Zinchenko and Gabby Jesus. I reckon Arteta's just going up to Pep and being like, just give us the deal. Give us the
Yeah,
deal on two players,
it
a
probably
striker, a
played a
defender.
role. I
So
mean, but Zinchenko, I mean, the games I've watched of Arsenal, you're looking at played with a back four at times, right?
mm,
You've got Gabriel, Ben White, Saliba, Zinchenko,
yep.
Tierney is another player, Tomiyasu, fullback they have. Zinchenko, when he started, is actually, in the games I've seen, actually been their weakest link in the back, like at the back, just because of how good players like Saliba and Ben White are playing, and
I
Gabriel.
think I think because I watched their first game, right? First game of the season. I think Zinchenko played decently well in that first game, but it's just been downhill ever since.
Well,
That
he
those
got an
those other
assist in that first game, didn't he?
yeah,
Yeah,
those other guys had been outperforming him.
mm.
Saliba, White, Ramsdale's been holding it down at the back and goals for them as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think he's just been outperformed
I,
by
I
some other players that
Zinchenko never really convinced me at Man City, though. He was always a bench player, which
well,
at Man City you don't know what that means.
he never really got a chance at Man City. If you really think about it, he did get some game time. You
Mm.
can't deny him that. But yeah, like you said, you can't really count out bench players for Man City, just considering how well Pep does with scouting and
Yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
his appeal. I mean, you look, Gabby Jesus, take him for example. They Man City was always used to run a false nine lineup, and Gabby Jesus most of the time would be on the bench,
Mm,
and he
mm,
comes to Arsenal and provides a great start for them as a striker.
mm,
But Zinchenko looks to be the opposite way because
mm,
you look at your right and your left back for Man City at the time, and you would
mm,
have had Kyle Walker and you would have had Cancelo as
mm. Yeah,
your
yeah.
left back and your right back, and
And he'd always take Cancelo over.
well, you
Yeah,
definitely taking Cancelo over Zinchenko.
yeah.
You definitely. I mean, I've had Cancelo in my fantasy Premier League for 2 years now, and he's been killing it. So you definitely take Zinchenko.
I would say, I mean, part of it's probably because there was a lot going on. I mean, West Ham was sort of looking at Zinchenko. And the sort of news then reports that were coming out is Zinchenko didn't want to play at fullback anymore. He wanted to play at midfielder. If that's the sort of direction he wants to take his career, then you could understand maybe why Arsenal playing him at the fullback position isn't working. Obviously, his style of play or the style of play he wants to play would make him more suitable to a midfielder. Have I seen that when he's played at Arsenal? I'm not sure. I'm going to have to watch more of him to see whether he is sort of playing out of position a bit. But, if Arsenal respond to that, we would see Zinchenko move into midfield positions in the future, which, might happen if Partey gets injured.
That's what I was about to say. There's not really much scope of him to move in until I guess someone gets
Yeah,
injured or another unforeseen event happens to one of the players there.
yeah.
But they've got some good players in the
Yeah.
midfield, so
Not
it's not like you
defensive
can get.
midfielder lacking in depth, but attacking they've got a lot of quality. So you don't see. I feel like Zinchenko would be a box to box midfielder just because of that fullback
Yeah.
experience running down the lines. But we'll see. We'll see on that one. Well, I
Speaking
think, yeah,
speaking about former Manchester United, Manchester City players, let's move to a now current Manchester City player, Jackson.
yeah,
Shall
yeah.
we do that, or shall we keep him for a bit later?
Yeah, I thought, we have to talk about him eventually, don't we?
Yeah,
He's always gonna come about, isn't he?
I thought it was a nice segue into talking about him. But first, little curveball for you. Let's talk about Saliba from Arsenal. Let's talk about Saliba first. Yeah, you all
Yeah,
think we were
yeah.
going to go to Erling Haaland. No, let's talk about Saliba, Jackson. What do you
Uh,
think? What
we'll
do you think
we'll
about
just
Saliba?
give a quick. I mean, I mentioned him before. I think he deserves some respect because he is outperforming uh Zinchenko. But his history is interesting. Arsenal signed him from Ligue 1, I'm pretty sure, years ago.
Yep.
And then kept sending him out on loan. I think Marseille he went. And he just didn't get a look in by Arteta earlier. But somehow, it's come in this year. Arteta said, I want you to stay. He's had a few years' experience now. He's built up his craft, and as it turns out, he's a really good defender. I mean, you'll see the stats. They really do deserve some respect. I mean, we're talking about him being probably their best defender in that back four. And he's still quite young. So he just adds to that like youth that Arsenal have.
That's it. I mean, look at he's a 50% win rate for Jules and 53 recoveries,
Mm.
20 clearances.
Yeah.
That's pretty good for 6 games.
Yeah,
That is very
yeah,
good.
yeah. That's a lot. That is a lot. You're talking like
Mm,
ridiculous numbers from him there. That's almost like that's just shy of 10 clearances a game, basically.
that's it.
But it's like it does add. I think if he can keep up this form, he's going to be an incredible defender for the long term. And this is the interesting thing about this Arsenal team is they're so young. They've
Falkland.
got years to develop. We'll see how it goes from here, but we won't tease you any further. We should talk about Erling Haaland. What can I say other than 6 appearances, 10 goals, Matt?
What can I say? He's not human. Not human. That's what I can say.
uh,
I don't know what's gone into the Erling Haaland since he's come into the Premier League, because most strikers they come from the Bundesliga, they come from Ligue 1, they come from Serie A, they come from a Liga, and they find it hard to play in the Premier League due to the physicality. I mean, we've seen it countless times. One of the more prominent examples for Chelsea, very close to my heart, was bringing back Romelu Lukaku last year and seeing how he struggled. But Erling Haaland, it was like he's the missing piece of the puzzle. He
yeah,
just slot right in.
I can't believe you've made that comparison. Lukaku's got spaghetti legs, and Erling Haaland is a beast. The comparison
It,
is
it
outrageous.
it doesn't matter about the comparison because you can take any other striker that's come from outside of England and into the Premier League, and it'll all be more than likely the same. They always struggle to get goals. They always struggle
Yeah.
for the first half of the season. But
Mm.
Erling Haaland's come in, 10 goals, 6 appearances, 25 shots, mate, and he's got an assist as well.
Yeah.
He's
And it's
just
also
come.
looking at his stats as well. His passes per match are also quite high for a like forward player. I
Yeah,
remember having a look, and you think, right? Well, that's the Man City system, isn't it? He's involved in the build up, and he's working with them. And you know what? The experience he's going to have at Man City is going to be insane because we've seen how many goals they score with a false nine system, and now they're just going to funnel through him. I can't remember how many goals Man City have scored so far in 6 games. I assume it's something like 20.
let me pull it up while you're talking.
I assume it's 20, which would mean he scored 50% of their goals in the league, basically.
I do remember the assist that he got as well. He did assist Phil Foden in one of their games, and he was part of the lead up to that as well. So
Well, I
he
remember his
does.
game
He
against
does.
us against us.
Yeah,
That was very impressive.
you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we were in trouble.
so Manchester City have 20 goals for and 6 against.
Yeah,
So
all right. I was
they
bang on.
have.
So he scored 50% of their
Yeah.
goals. Outrageous. But you know what? That's how a striker should be played. I believe that you should funnel goals through a man like that. And there's very few teams in the league that have that. As things stands, Chelsea do not have a player like that. There are right now there are only
Don't
three
remind me.
teams, well, even 2 or 3 with established players that definitely do that. Haaland and Harry Kane.
Yeah.
Like Gabriel Jesus has to prove himself yet if he's going to be that man. But as things stand, he's not. Goals are coming from Martinelli and Emil Smith Rowe and Erdegaard. There's goal scorers galore there. Chelsea don't have an established goal scorer. No one funneling through. Lukaku was meant to be that. He isn't. And, there's nobody else in the lower leagues who is that yet.
Not
None of
yet,
them
no.
scored enough
I mean-
goals. And at Brighton, just everyone scores goals. I don't care. McAllister's not going to keep doing that. But
Pascal Gross as well.
Pascal Gross, they'll all score. Not Welbeck, but everyone else. Everyone but Welbeck.
Gone are the days you see a big guy in the middle at the front of the pitch with a long ponytail, i.e. Andy Carroll. I mean, you see these players that have ponytails, these big tall guys, Andy Carroll, Erling Haaland. Yes, I just compared Andy Carroll to Erling Haaland.
You're just off the ball
I know
today.
it's a very bad comparison, but basically, all I'm saying, it must have been the KFC. All I'm saying is Andy Carroll was that big guy at the front of the pitch, getting the balls crossed into him, and he's just getting his head onto it and scoring. And that's what Andy Carroll did for half of his career.
Let me just say that Andy Carroll has bones made of jello, and Erling Haaland won't see the injury table for the season.
But there's a difference. This is what I'm trying to get at, is that they're both very different on opposite ends of the striker spectrum. They both had their team attack funneled through them, or they both are having their team attack funneled through them, but they're opposite ends. Erling Haaland, if he's defending a corner and there's a counter attack, he's running.
Yeah,
he's on his bike. Doesn't matter if Phil Foden's there. Doesn't matter if De Bruyne is there. Doesn't matter if there's five against one. He's bike. He's always going to score. That's something that is going to help him. That's something that shows those 10 goals and those 6 appearances. Especially, I believe he got a goal this morning, or yesterday morning against his old club, Borussia Dortmund, in the Champions League as well. A lot of people were saying, maybe he'll play the respect card and not score against them. But he's a professional. He's in there. He's ready to play. It doesn't matter what team he's playing for or who he's playing for. He's there. He's going to perform at his greatest every time.
I mean, Matt, we'll finish. I got to ask the big question, Matt. How many goals is he going to score this season?
I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but
you're already ahead of yourself.
He's winning Golden Boot. He's winning Golden Boot.
As things stand, yeah.
Yeah, as things stand, he's winning Golden Boot. I think it's only 6 games into the league and he scored 10 already. This is hard, man. I don't want to go too high and then come the end of the league and you see it too high and everyone's like, oh, why did you go like 15 high? Yeah. I'm gonna go 32.
I'm gonna go 28. I think I'm gonna hit about there. I think Man City score 100 goals a season. If he kept up the 50% rate, you're talking 50 goals, which he can't do. You just have to think that's not possible. So I think 30 is a safe bet.
He's not human. He's not human. He's an alien. He's a robot, man. He's a robot. Who knows?
To be fair, Man City have had easier games their first few. So, they've been pretty easy games for him to rack up some goals. But we'll see whether that continues when he faces some properly tough teams. That was the same. People criticised Lukaku for that back in the day for Manchester United. They said he scores all the goals against the little teams, but not there when he's needed against the big teams. That will be the next big test for Erling Haaland. Now, I mean, we're giving him 30 to 50 goals for the end of the season, but there was another player who was meant to be right up there with Erling Haaland to compete with him all the way. Of course, I'm talking about Jesse Lingard.
Jesse Messi, Lingardinho.
Jokes, I'm talking about Darwin Núñez, but let's just take a moment to laugh at Jesse Lingard. His stats are quite hilarious.
What are you talking about? Let's flick off his stats.
Let's have a look. Yeah, let's have a look at him.
Why not? Why not?
He's not had a good time. He's not had a good time.
So what happens? What happens when you move to Nottingham Forest and not West Ham?
For 200k, yeah. Hey. 0 goals, 0 assists. Tragic. It's pretty bad. He was averaging a goal and a goal or an assist per game with West Ham on loan. That's all I'm going to say. He's let himself go. It's totally outrageous. I mean, there's a lot of West Ham fans who will still bring up Lingard.
Just slide that in. Yep, and I know you're definitely one of them.
Nah, I'm over it. I'm over it. I'm laughing. When we played Nottingham Forest, he was terrible. He was their worst player on the pitch by far.
See, before that Nottingham Forest game, it was like a bad X for Jackson, and now after Nottingham Forest game, Jackson's like, don't worry about it.
I never got that. A lot of West Ham players were literally treating it like an old X. That's not even a joke. Yeah, they were like every news report. They were like, oh, look what Jesse's doing. It's like stalking a ex-girlfriend's Twitter account. It's like ridiculous stuff.
That's why you don't get too attached to loan players.
Yeah, why would
at the end of the league, at the end of the season, they're going back to their club.
Yeah, We've had loan players in the past. I mean, I never got attached to Samir Nasri when he was at the club for like 6 months. And everyone's like, "Oh, Jesse, come back, Jesse!" Like, it was outrageous behavior. But we're glad to see that he's not doing so well. And unfortunately, that means we have to talk about a player who was meant to be much better, but his stats aren't that much better. Let's talk about Darwin Núñez, Matt.
Yeah, let's talk about him. Should be heading balls, but instead he's heading players. Yeah.
Good one, Matt. Good one.
Let's have a look.
1 goal, 1 assist, 1 red card.
2 hit the woodwork twice, missed 4 chances.
Yeah. So I think so. The stats that I've put together there, it doesn't look like he's had a great start. And the
go from the stats.
Yeah. Well, from the stats I compiled, the issue becomes he's not had a great run. Goal and an assist in a couple games, plus a red card. His form hasn't been great. But at the end of the day, you can say from the woodwork hits and from the missing big chances that he should have more goals, even with the fact he's had less appearances than Haaland because of the red card. But
that still doesn't amount to he's at 1 goal currently.
Yeah, that's
if you get those woodworks, if you get those 2 woodwork hits in, that's 3. And let's say he scores maybe half of those chances. We'll give generous those chances missed. Though that's 5. That's still only half of Haaland's output.
Yeah, and that some people would say it's unlucky, but there's also an element of is he taking his chances well? And you know what? Maybe he isn't.
So, but someone who has been taking their chances well in that Liverpool team, Luis Diaz. Luis Diaz.
Yeah.
I mean,
good player.
Just look at how he sort of salvaged Liverpool in the game that Darwin got red carded and sent off. The goal that he scored, I believe, was after Darwin got sent off, was beautiful. Yeah. I hate Liverpool with a passion, but that goal was beautiful.
They there's something wrong going on at Liverpool, but it's certainly not affected Luis Diaz, who remains a quality player, and it has affected Salah. Something has gone wrong there, and Salah is not as prolific as he was.
We can also see, sorry to cut you off, Jackson, the breakup between the Salah, the Mane, and Fabinho trio at the front as well.
Firmino.
Yeah. Who else are you going to put there? Diego Jota.
Fabinho. We'll put Fabinho up front for Liverpool. Come on, let's do it.
You see the effects of Mane moving to Bayern Munich. Yeah. You see what's happening there. They haven't really gelled this front line together as much as what they used to.
I don't think Firmino was a massive loss for that trio because they had Diogo Jota, but Mane, the spark he brought is clearly lacking. And Darwin Núñez, as things stand, has not brought it back. So with that said, Matt, we've talked about a lot of signings there. Quite a few. Some that we think will do well, others that we are concerned about. I'm going to get you, Matt, to name one of the players we've talked about that you think is going to have the best season, and talk about the player that you think is going to miss expectations the most, disappoint expectations the most.
Well,
and remember, expectations are relative to the club they're at, so you can't just get shit on Jesse Messi.
I think we all know who's gonna perform the best in the season, and you can pick it by now. Who I'm going to talk about, and it's going to be Erling Haaland. With the trajectory that he's on, and from the games that he's played at the moment, he's going to outperform all the transfers this season. Yeah.
And your worst?
My worst. So we talked about a couple here relative to the club. That is a very good term. I'm glad you mentioned that, because relative to the club, you think I'm going to say Kuka? No, Zinchenko. I think Zinchenko is going to be the worst performing transfer this season that we've talked about in this video relative to his club, purely based on the fact that how he's played so far and the positional change that he wants to make from his left back position into the midfield role. I don't think Arsenal gives him that chance. If they do give him that chance, I think they give him that chance a bit too late into the season. So I think he's going to be the most underperforming transfer out of this video.
Yeah.
Jackson?
Right. Yeah, I see that.
Who's your best and your worst transfers?
I'll go with Erling Haaland. I think he's going to be best. The worst is difficult, but I'd have to settle on Fofana. I'd say Fofana. I think Fofana is an unknown, and for the amount of money Chelsea paid for him, 70 million about there, you have to consider that's a pretty outrageous amount of money, and I don't think he's going to deliver on that. If Koulibaly overshadows Fofana in that back line, I think for me that makes Fofana a bad signing, and I think he'll suffer for it.
They spent way too much on him due to the England bias that they have against players.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it very many times. We've seen it with Jack Grealish last year, £100 million for Jack Grealish to sit on the bench at Man City. Yeah. It's that England bias that caused the club to spend a lot on Fofana.
Yeah, it's probably played an element, and we'll see whether it was justified by the end of the season. With that, everyone, we'll bid you adieu. Wherever you're listening to us, subscribe, like, let us know what you thought on the video. And we'll be seeing you again in a week's time when we finally get to put the transfer window behind us and get to the season at hand with hopefully no more postponements. With that, we will speak to you all later.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.